Peace in Islam. Welcome back. We're going to continue, and that's why we'll be doing a good bit of reading and cap off a lot of this issue. Should be the last video in this series before we move on to the next. Okay, you see right here we got the convention blast, the use of color. So you know the use of black also. But this newspaper, writing from a third party perspective, going to use the term Negroes. Say Philadelphia 1848, that's before 1865. You're already doing conventions and having as statesmen showing that we've been more free and more politically in tune. I had more knowledge of politics at this time and more independent at this time as a group. And this before 1865, the so-called proclamation that free everybody, allegedly. But we see, you say, a Negro convention in Philadelphia has urged Negroes to abandon the word colored and especially the words Afrique and African. You see, a bunch of the Moors who've been in government and know the truth. They know they've been home, as opposed to the scholars who've been usually black Roman scholars selected by them, talented 10th, and those other systems that they create. But we see a good bit of Moors that know who they've been still, but not all the way. Right here they say they recommend the use of the phrase oppressed Americans. Which don't make no sense neither. Using a status term. It's like saying free Americans, enslaved Americans. Also using a past tense adjective, which is erroneous in naming, like the United States is an erroneous name. More properly, it's the states that have been united, and which makes United States citizens erroneous, U.S. citizen erroneous. As Moorish Americans, we always tell people it'll be one day when everybody have to get their shit together, because everybody out of line, outside the constitutional form of government just by language alone. And that's an example using a past tense term as an adjective. So properly, Moorish Americans are citizens, are members of the states that we had united properly. So basically citizens of the United States. That's the only way that could be said properly in law. And as you can see, no one uses that. They say U.S. citizens and stuff like that. And basically, we're in a light form of slavery. So let's continue. We're going to talk about different forms, the situations, how it happened, basically the origins of it. Say, to restore the spiritual health of the pagans, in this case, Africans, the intention was to enslave bodies to redeem souls, and in the process make the slave economy profitable. This was the engine that animated the code of the Inquisition, established in Cartagena de Indias since 1610. So you see, anytime you see Inquisitions in court, you're dealing with Moors and Christians. Thus, the demonization of the African and his practices was justification created by the church to undertake the new crusade. You see, again, dealing with Moors and Christians, crusades in the West. The evangelization of blacks, however, as can be deduced from analysis of the sources, The church did not seek to help pagans to be good Christians, but above all, he intended to make them renounce the legacies of Africa, the Moorish Empire, such as their botanical, magical, religious, and divinatory knowledges, which were used, among other things, to resist them. Commercial exchange attributed to the character of merchandise to the African people. The reification process laid the foundation of dehumanization. But in addition to denying humanity and dismantling the societies and territories of Africans, the reification inherent in fraude create the assumption that Africans as were objects lacking memory. It's very important because we try to tell y'all, we get that question a lot, what's going to change, what the difference for them calling themselves Moor instead of black. That's the first question most people ask, like, they can't see metaphysically the ramifications of calling themselves that, so they can't see the benefits or the reason not to, or the benefits of calling yourself other things, namely more in our case. There ain't no other things but that, what we talking about here, and why. So we can see right here, we talking about spiritual, divine things, things unseen. Those are spiritual things, things unseen. So you see, they dehumanize you with the term black, which objects lacking memory. So you can imagine if I take all your memory of your past just from your being a baby till now, you would be able to see how if I take all your memory from baby to the day, you realize that you would need a sponsor or a helper. You have to learn how to eat, walk, talk. You'll need help at every corner. You can't do nothing yourself. You don't got no destiny for the future. And a lot of different things you can imagine how bad they're going to be for you if I take all your memory. So just place that over a nation of people. So you got a nation of people who are adults, but they get their memory taken from them and start fresh under black. All the things you did under Moors or any other terms in the past erased and given to other peoples and the likes. Your history started 1600s under the term black, or you go back to the 1400s under the term Negro. Anything before that don't apply to you under that term. If you call yourself that, or Indian, you begin when them terms show up in history. That's it. So that's what they're saying, lacking memory. That is non-historical people without the ability to recall their past or project themselves in the future. From then on, paganization gave rise to a new ideology, the stopping of Africa in the same framework of justifying the slavery of being without a history. This ideology crossed the ocean and was consolidated in America through the Inquisition, the laws of the Indies, and the Black Codes. And always how they dealt with Moors in this war. In all the auto de fe, they were executed accused of Judaism. But there were also many trials of people accused of being witches, sorcerers, enlightened peoples, and sodomites. Many of them were neither Spanish nor Portuguese nor Jews nor Moors. So you see, the fact that they're writing about American history and they're saying that a lot of them were not Jews and Moors, showing that there must have been a lot of Jews and Moors here. And again, look through these. You have to translate them, but a lot of these Inquisition records still out, and you can read these trials and stuff that will see what's going on. It said they belong to other castes, quote unquote. In most cases, the best known researchers were, with a few exceptions, have concentrated their studies on recounting and understanding to the horror of readers the Inquisition procedures, dedicating less space both to the victims, that is who the victims really were. So you see, they conflating that in these stories because that's what the whole point of the Inquisition thing's been, to make sure ain't no Moors being Moors here, or Jews being Jews, or anybody teaching other people about that. So as well as to the truth or the secret and or on the very transparent motivations of judges, informers, and executioners. So we can see they hiding stuff within them. So the aim of the Inquisition in the viceroyalty of the Rio de Plata, Napoleon's triumph over the Spanish army, and the imposition of his brother on the throne of Spain brought in the Americas the beginning of the end of the Inquisition. In 1808, the French decreed the extinction of the court of the Inquisition in Spain and its possessions. In turn, the Spanish, through the governor of Cortes, imposed a new, more liberal constitution, decreed in 1813. The abolishment of the Inquisition, however, again Napoleon defeated and Ferdinand VII, having returned to the throne of Spain, he re-established the Inquisition system of religious control, particularly in America. Simultaneously to the development of these events in the Iberian Peninsula and the Rio de la Plata, the Assembly of the year 1813 decreed the elimination of the Inquisition in Buenos Aires. In other words, if the Assembly of the year there are 13 abolished the existence and operation of the Inquisition in Buenos Aires. This is a clear sign that even though little operated existed.
Oh, is it legal?
Yeah, because they already and I did a damn good job about making the Moors here forget, put them in a state of amnesia, and the United States cap it off. The elimination of the Court of Inquisition of Lima took place only in 1820. Okay. So, Fernando VII, the successor of the regent, Maria Cristina, declared the Holy Inquisition extinct by 1834. So the Holy Inquisition been a big thing here for a while until they clean up. Since Isabel, the whole plan been to clean up the Canaries, which is America, of infidel Canaries, which is Moors. And that plan stick throughout time, up until now, still trying to persecute Moors and try to act like we don't exist, when the history suggests, and the people here suggest that this is the land of Moors. So, getting around that, you only can make this not the land of Moors in our mind, and namely by changing us to blacks. Brazil, Portuguese colony, it had a population of more or less 15,000 rebellious so-called black slaves, and lasted for the most of the 17th century. The Portuguese royal troops used 6,000 soldiers, and it took them 2 years to surrender it. So you see, the Portuguese, they stole Brazil fighting Moors. It ain't like they just had Brazil all through the thing happy. You had one group who would do business with them because most likely they'd probably family. Brazil had all of those dogs, their first Moors who were coming out of Europe. And This is the side of the stories they don't want to tell you. They're going to make it look like they just be kicking ass, Portuguese and Spain, and bullying everything and all the stuff, and associating all the words to them and everything, but we're going to break that up. Even in many of these palanques, they were black kings, so-called. For example, Bencos Piojo, the king of Arcabuco, near Cartagena de Indias in Colombia. In Venezuela, King Manuel was famous. In Panama, the Blanco king. In the Viceroy of Peru, there was a Maroon king. And Huaura, in the middle of the 16th century. The Viceroy of the time sent a herd of 120 soldiers who violently entered the palanque and killing all its members, allegedly killing all its members. You already know somebody's gonna get away. In the cut. In the palanques, the black maroons, so-called, maintain a community life characterized by equality among all its members, both for work and for distribution of food and social and moral behavior. And again, don't let them fool you. These so-called maroon communities are stole some of the places under the alcabalas instead of encomienda. They stole paying the sharif instead of Spain or Portugal. Some of these Moors who still remember the old way. And we know a lot of these Moors are still been paying them because the United States been paying them. The United States been paying them instead of Britain after they free themselves from the Christian Britain colony. They put themselves under the Sharif. It's like other countries would do at this time. The United States did the same thing. Now they want to act like they different, like they is subject. And that's a whole other story probably get into another series about what happened at that time. And hold on. Now they say, shit. Sorry about that. Okay, now they say, for their defense, in some palanques, forts have been built. So you see, a lot of these so-called countries in South America using these people fort for their oil protection and shit. And boy had forts built. These so-called runaway slaves building forts. They were made of palisades at the highest point of their temporary shelter. Their only weapons were swords, knives, and other so-called white weapons. The shotguns and shit. They never owned firearms, allegedly. And we got records of the Spanish talking about Moors shooting at them, not only with hand firearms, but with cannons and shit from the forts. And who got a fort with no cannons? Make no sense. We even got a record of the Turks and the Ottoman Empire supplying weapons to Moors in the Colombia area, which is where these palanques is at. A lot of them. In other cases, they completed their defense by collecting stones. They carried out exercises of military nature using tactics of guerrillas. In the case of the Creole Maroons, they did not have a king. Their chief called themselves colonials or captains, since they did not come directly from Africa, since they were, as said, Creole Maroons. And again, the authors of these books don't know where the hell none of these people come from, really, because they ain't been around at the time. They writing these things, looking at books, allegedly, because a lot of these shit they could be making out. We don't know. We ain't with them when they doing their researches. And so yeah, we look into them, boy. The dance of the black, we see this in a couple of pictures, but we see Popular music was carried out mainly by blacks. They were organized into societies or nations among the existing so-called black communities. Around 1827, we could mention the following: Cabunda on Chile Street, Benguela on Mexico Street, Moors on Chile Street, Rubolo on Independence Street, Angola on Mexico Street, and Conga on Independence Street. So you see Angola and Congo as common terms used on this side. And 1842, the number of these communities had increased, and in the Gazeta Mercantil on June 25th of that year, the following nations are mentioned: Anza, Congo, Kamunda, Kangela, Mujumbi, Quizama, Angola, Brazilian, Quipara, Mina, like the mine, Nago, Sabalu, so they know how to form themselves into nations. Benguela, and that's like Bengali, some other terms on the eastern side of the so-called Africa that coincide with that. Mozambique, we already know. Lumbi. And you had the Lumbi tribe all the way up here. Bascuni. Blue Congo. And some other terms. And again, like we said, they ain't take the time to move all these terms over there for you. They only looked at with the Congo and the Angola. And of course, Guinea. A couple other terms, they moved from the west to the east after exploiting the west. Umbala, Cassants, Mayambe, like Maya, and other Maros, among Musandi, Mondongo, Machika, and others. In the book The Memories of an Old Man, Victor Galvez tells us the party called the Rosas, the entire black population gathered in the Plaza de Mayo. Each association brought its music, made up of blacks who had their drums in an original shape, a kind of large gourd that they placed between their legs and sitting down in a short stick, and they get a lot of this. They connect a lot of this to Andalusia too, and Africa. And there's a lot of opinion stuff. We don't care about their opinions, just give us information. Okay. Yeah, the rest of this just opinions from another book. Illustration of Yusuf El Alawi, better known as R.P. Ignacio de la Casas, Jesuit, 1550 to 1608. And these some of the Moors I've been telling you about who been going to Rome, trying to get freedom for you through Rome as Romans, black Romans, converted from Moorish, going into Rome, and been the ones at this with the rest of the cardinals trying to get freedoms and stuff for so-called Indians, because they're not about Moors who turn Christian in America. So, however, despite the enormous restriction that the Moriscos had to participate in Spanish religious life, both in Spain and in America, the figure of Father Ignacio de la Casas indicates that there were exceptions. The de la Casa was one of the few Moriscos who admitted to the Society of Jesus. His career is very little known. The Moorish man from Granada, who had studied at the Casa de la Doctrina del Abacin, Granada between 1562 and 1567 was a student of another Jesuit, also of Moorish origin, Father Juan de Albutaldo. He entered the society in 1572 and also of the Moorish, and also took his vows in 1603. His studies on the Moorish question in Spain and in America. Again, they making sure that they put Moors under the jurisdiction of Rome with them. I mean, their job. Again, they used to go from some of the wars, used to capture Moors from here. And that's why I've been saying a lot of those Moors from Palos that Isabel had under subjugation. Been from here because they know how to get here. That's why she get here and been able to ride around and know everything at and register everything, because those pilots, Nino and all the other pilots, been from here, captured from here. Because they didn't take them to where they claim, Wikipedia claim they get captured from Ghana, West Africa. But yet, they over here discovering, which is registering. That means you already know where you at. You just changing the names from the old Moorish name to the New World Spanish version of the fucking name. Had a great impact on the future evangelizations of you and assimilation of the South American Indians in the Spanish social economic system, encomienda, more or less in the same years that the Dominican friars Bartolomé de Las Casas, another one who they probably get from here, who, and you know, they would have gone, had a lot of us in their presence over there. And a lot of times read the stories that they go and bring these answers to questions, they go and interrogate the most. I know they do all kind of tactics to get information out of you. And that's how they learn a lot about over here through that. And they become friars, some of them themselves. Get turned out. And you can see a lot of them boys having debates, but once you see protecting Indians on the side of the debate, most likely us one who been converted by Spain. He said Antonio de Montesino wrote and published their famous writings and sermons also in defense of American Indians. So they've been writing books and stuff about the Indians over here. Echoing these requests, King Philip II, by royal sale of January 24, 1569, created the Court of Inquisition in the city of Lima and in Mexico. The Court of the Holy Inquisition of Lima and had jurisdiction over the lands that currently make up Argentina, Chile, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Uruguay, in addition to Peru itself. It also had jurisdiction over what is now Ecuador, Colombia, and Venezuela until the last court in America was created in Cartagena de Indias in 1610, which had jurisdiction over these last three territories. The first appointed to occupy the court of Lima was Servan de Cerezuela and Andrews Bustamante. Bustamante died during the journey before arriving in Lima. Cerezuela arrived in vice-regal capital 1570, 10 years before founding of Buenos Aires. And that's, again, Buenos Aires is where these information going into black schools. They ain't put them in their own schools, they put them in the schools of your people down there. It's about Afro-Platinensis, whatever they call them people. So, hold on. The main difference between the Inquisition courts of America and those of Spain. Damn it. Hold on. The Inquisition courts, the main difference between the Inquisition courts of America and those of Spain was that the court has almost no jurisdiction over the so-called Indians. Its main objective was to eradicate from the Indies the new Christians suspected of being Judaizers, which basically talking about anybody who had knowledge of the old world or the world that they had over there in Spain. So I know who that is. To ensure the correct evangelization of the enslaved Africans. And we talk about that a lot, how we try to separate certain morals based off knowledge and what they know about themselves. Modifying practices that the Inquisition considered abhorrent, witchcraft, totemism, like the totem pole, and to judge throwing them out of America to the Protestant. The first recorded auto de fe took place in Lima on November 15, 1573, and the first relaxed status burned with Mateo Soldado of French nationality for professing the Protestant religion. The establishment of the Inquisition in South America was strongly opposed by some bishops. You see, even a lot of them who've been opposing it too. And you could get a lot of those records too of the discussions, debates, and stuff like that. Translate them and see what they're saying. Especially Friar Francisco de Victoria, Bishop of Tucumán, considered a new Christian, or more who've been converted. That's what they call new Christians in Andalusia. Considered a new Christian at the end of the 16th century. The personal history of this prelate of the Catholic Church in Tucumán is not exempt from fascinating alternatives, since in reality he came from a so-called Jewish Portuguese parents. So he probably been one of the Moors from Lisbon. In the 17th century, the ideas arose of creating a court of inquisition either in Cordoba or in Buenos Aires. The alleged reasons were that through the port of Rio de la Plata, characterized by strong contraband, with the consent of the highest official authorities, Portuguese Judaizers again entered and prohibited books, which were also introduced, as well as African slaves whose evangelization was at the very least effective and infective. Initiative did not prosper, so they had some Moors who been faking as Christians on the Moors, but still had the knowledge and still were teaching to the other Moors. So in 1605, the court of Lima was concerned, and according to one of the letters of the Inquisition in 1609, of frequent arrival in Buenos Aires of ships that departed from Lisbon, like I said, crewed by Flemish, the Portuguese, and a few Spaniards who brought in pipes, officially declaring that they came full of wine and salt. And the wine is important because we go back before 1492, we got the wine industry. We talked about that in the last video, where they've been getting the wine. Andalusia bringing gold. The trade been going back and forth. And to like the books and images, which they secretly smuggled into neighbors' houses to extract them after dark and send them inland. In other words, they did not only smuggle in African slaves, but other merchandise to trade between Buenos Aires and the rest of South America. Right here we got quoted from a congressional set, United States Government Print Office, 57 House Congress for the Session, House of Representatives. And yeah, a lot of these little records of House of Representatives talk about you. I probably could do a video on that by itself, just what the House of Representatives do all the time. They talk about one time, they talk about how the Chinese try to destabilize their blacks, like they call us their blacks. That's why you always gotta let them know, nigga, I ain't, you're black. You talking to the wrong one here. But they used to they were talking about how through the West Coast, through the town in Oakland, was one of the highest how Costco been shipping in AK-47 and shit like that to basically drop them off in the so-called hush. And they know about that. And that's another thing you can do. You can sue these people for a lot of stuff that they allow. The government cannot allow their citizens, regardless of what status you in, they assume that you are a proper status because the operation of the government is running. So everybody assumed to be proper, even if they all just decide to lie together. It's still by the multitude, the will of the people. So you gotta, those some of the things you gotta take with you to your reparation case court or whatever you going to do. Ask for these type of things like this. And right here, they showing you that they know that you from here, and they got records of that shit. They got a lot of shit that they don't want to give up. Plenty more start putting FOIA requests for stuff and they don't get. The United States got the Duchess of the Medina Sidonia family from the books we be reading from her book. She said in the interview that a lot of the places ain't want to give her documents, especially the United States. That's why a lot of the stuff only talking about the Moorish Empire in South America from Mexico down, because the United States play games. And she been asking for a specific document that she knows they got. And they've been denying her requests, even with a FOIA. Some people say, shit, ain't about to disrupt this plantation, not these days. And the book come out in 2008, so she did get it out before she passed, but I want to know where the United States got. Right here you see, you're talking about the South, and one of the records they say, a most peculiar thing is this Quarterfridge in his book on the human race asserts the fact that the African lived on these islands long before the discovery of America by Columbus. So you see, they talk about stuff like that in the government amongst each other. 1901, that's around the time when he was taking over the government in Washington DC, and then the rest of the places. Manifest Destiny, getting off the colony for the first time, Bogart and taking lands around this time, so they're discussing about you. And this around the time you still had your own cities, your own so-called maroon towns everywhere. And some 20-something years later, you got the Knights of Christ going on a rampage from Washington, D.C., what we call so-called race riots. So you can just look at one in your city. You most likely had one around between 1865 after the war and 1930. They've been consolidating all towns into the United States. And a lot of them in your towns. Talk about little good bird things. That the Spaniards found that one Negro was equal to 10 Indians for work. They're talking about the history in the United States government, showing that these people ain't even know about the history. They're learning about this shit. And that's how they learn how to deal with you, from what the Spanish used to do to you in Andalusia. That's why you got some of the same tactics they use, like using the term mulatto. That comes straight out of the books of the Spanish. And many other understandings and stuff that the Spanish did to break morals, they use the same things. Those little things that they owe you for. The United States, the main one claiming that they don't owe you nothing because they been late in the game. They figure they ain't been really popular like that. So they try to knock the claim, give them to France or Britain or one of these other corporations to pay. But again, I can do a whole the United States where they did series, and that's the presentment of crimes against humanity by the United States, regardless of who been running the government or whoever. That corporation, or not the people walking around. They ultimately they is a part of it. They all corporations walking around, so they gonna hypothecate, and they is benefiting off that. So companies, big ass corporations who been the manufacturer of the ships, the old tobacco companies, all these corporations that been East Indian companies, and United States had their own companies. So they gonna act like they ain't had companies doing these same things. They been late, but they join in. Late, but they join in. And then we ain't counting what they did afterwards, from even after 1865 until yesterday or today, at the last moment, because they keep going on. It's still violations of crimes, a violation of treaty, and the whole nine. So the deals were made on the basis of great sincerity. It's from that book, The White King, and they were talking about pieces of the Indies. That's what they've been calling you before they start calling you African slave. They've been calling you pieces of the Indies. And then, of course, using the term Indies, they have to change that. But in this book, you see they talk about who they're enslaving and calling pieces of the Indies. And you see, I am selling him because he is a maroon. So they ain't call no so-called Indians maroons. They call all people maroons. Unless you're using the term Indians or indigenous. But they change, you can see how they change things. The records show pieces of the Indies in the oldest records. Prices were not and could not be uniform. The distance, the freight, the risk of the trips, and the general conditions of the market affected the fluctuation. In addition, the personal conditions of slaves for sale, their race, their sex and age. The Royal Treasury taxed the prices of the Indian pieces by selling the trade concessions. In addition, customs and other taxes had to be paid. The Almayer Fasgo which favored smuggling in Buenos Aires, since in this way the profits they were more cheeky. They differed by their adaptation to the environment too. Bozales were the newcomers who did not speak Spanish and not yet know showing their tricks or qualities. The Latinos, on the other hand, already handled the language passably. A third category, the Creole, were those who have been born in America. Cover of the reprint of the book El Tizón de la Nobleza Española, Armuclas, and San Benitos. According to some examples provided by Manuel Barrios, the Inquisition in Spain persecuted, judged, and condemned African descendants for the sole fact of being Morenos or Moors. And right here you see they showing you Moors been a term used for dark-skinned people. That's what they basically be using it for. You let people come around again, changing your history. Trying to make them look like Moors or modern day type Moroccan peoples. And they don't call themselves Moors, they call themselves Moroccans for a reason, or Arabs. They showing you how they reconstruct your history again. They always been known for dark-skinned people, been known as Moors before black. The reason was very simple for them being dark, that is of African origin. It was impossible for him to be an old Christian. On the other hand, if there were traces of mixed race in the back of that person, white with black, a bastard was automatically assumed. So they assume that you mix without even knowing if that's what that means, just light skin. As a simple example, the following paragraph by the author is transcribed below. And the old question is even saying basically the Roman nations who created a salvation, a story, and a system for themselves at Rome, Constantinople, Council of Nicaea, and to them You insane. If you think that been for you, that's your creed, your ancient creed. So a black Christian to them is always a slave to them, or enslaved, or salvation by them, saved by them. Their God, the white Jesus, or Kaiser the Border, who doubles as their prophet, and that's who they figure you with if you don't understand who you is. In the hearings on the morning of the Inquisition of Toledo on the 17th day of the month of July 1587, that was when they were already several times inhabited by Spaniards in the Rio de la Plata, of course. Before Mr. Inquisitor Don Lipe de Mendoza, and by his mandate, she was brought from her prison in a man's habit. So they put her in man's clothes to basically, just like they do now when they want to put any person we look up to in a dress on TV. It's the same concepts they get from this shit. 801, from which she was receiving oath in the form of law, under which she promised to tell the truth. But she said her name was Elena de Cepidus, a native of the city of Alhama, age between 41 and 42 years old or more, and his child was called Francisco de Medina, who is now deceased, and his father believed that he is alive, and that she, Francisca de Medina, his mother, was a slave of Benito de Medina, and that she was dark-haired. The accused, Elena de Cepidus, was convicted by the Holy Inquisition. The first official entry into the Indies of black slaves appeared in the instruction that the Catholic monarchs gave to Nicholas de Ovando on September 16, 1501. So you see, 1492 ain't that far away. They really, that date is pushed back. So basically, a lot of this stuff been already going on around the 1430s with what they gonna do with the captives, because they already been attacking places over here. We got those events. See, in clause 21 of this instruction, it is said that following items, because we with great care must seek the conversion of the Indians to our holy Catholic faith, and if there were people suspicious in the faith to say conversion, it could be some impediment, you will not consent, nor will you allow Moors to go there, nor Jews, no Erexes, no reconcile, no people converted back to our free, except if they were black slaves who were born into the power of Christians, our subjects and natives. So again, that's what Philip II based hers off Isabel's, because that's his grandmama. So he based his doctrine of how he want the people to be based off her. She started with this, and you see, it ain't really even based off complexion. You could be a black or somebody or an Indian, even if you just, as long as you down with them, you're good. If you ain't, then that's where the wall at. It's very interesting, and that's why a lot of us, that's why you see us with the uprisings and stuff, and you don't see the other people who been enslaved with uprisings because they of that nation. We always resisted that because we know we are the ancient creed. The ancient creed, which is called Islam. But that's a whole other story about what that really is. But we always fought against this conversion. A very interesting aspect of this clause is that the Catholic kings especially excluded foreigners who intended to bring African slaves to the Indies. The only ones authorized to do so were consequently the Castilians, since their slaves have the category of Latinos. So those been the ones who could speak Spanish and who already been down with them. That is, only African slaves born in Spain will be allowed to pass through, consequently already Christianized. This small detail, according to Davy, brought important effects contrary, quite possibly to the wishes and will of the Spanish authorities.